My God, I am rusty at that, but good evening. Today is Thursday, July 15th, 2021. I am still your host, Evan George, and welcome to Bostopia Nightly News. I'm going to switch my Yeti on what I think is There we go, which I believe is the better audio quality. Hello, debunks. So this is my first live in about, I think, 2 weeks and a day. I missed you all. I figured out last night that I do need to start resuming this in some consistency, mostly just to keep me from going out to the bars and getting unnecessarily drunk on a Thursday evening. So people know the normal deal. I look up, I look down. If you are watching this on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, hello, TikTok people, I recommend following me. Ideally on Twitch. I might start doing some more just relaxed, play video games, because that was the original brainchild for this. But then people started to like me on TikTok, so I figured out I'm going to try to incorporate you. Now, I don't know in what capacity I'm going to start doing the same schedule that I used to do, but there were big enough events this week that I figured, why not? Let's have a chat. And one of those events, definitely the biggest, is Jon Santiago making the decision to drop out of the Boston mayoral race. And Jon was probably my least favorite candidate. So it is fitting that he goes. The reason he was my least favorite candidate is because out of all the candidates, he was probably tied for the most conservative. He is a state rep, so you can say there's a reason he was in the race, but ultimately had no vision for the city, offered no unique or interesting policies. During forums, he would routinely just say, I'm going to listen to people to learn more about that. I'm paraphrasing, but close enough. And so he was really just there to almost fill up space on the stage. I was originally a little worried when he got that local 223 endorsement, which is Marty Walsh's old union, still run right now by a man named Marty Walsh, Marty Walsh's cousin. And so I thought that may be the direction that the more conservative, white, male vote would go towards. Again, he was one of two men in the race. And so back in my mind, I was going to do an odds prediction at some point in July. And I was probably going to rate Jon Santiago's chances at 10%, which is probably about double what I would rate John Barros. But ultimately, I think the writing was on the wall pretty early, actually, that he didn't have a pathway to victory. Now, he is, of course, another example of there is no downside to running for office. He managed to raise, what was the final number? $724,000. $724,000. He got his name out there. Sure, he met some interesting people, maybe had some good dinners. And as I said, he is a state representative. So he just raised a whole bunch of money, which is going to be able to keep him in office for a long, long time. And now every person who's still running is going to kiss his ass, unnecessarily. But we saw all the tweets the other night from people thanking him for running, so on and so forth, because they wanted his donors support. So now he's going to do like a farewell tour, having luncheons with the remaining candidates so that he can be wooed. Which is, I guess, a fitting end to his mayoral campaign. This was never about the city. This was never about trying to improve the lives of other people. This was a vanity project, which it is for most people. I know I'm sounding harsh. This is a little bit of a eulogy for his campaign. But I'm sure this will not be the last that I talk about Jon Santiago, as again, he is a state rep here in the city. Now, the interesting part is to see how the dominoes fall, because he would have sucked up, ideally, or most predictively, some of the more conservative male vote of Boston. And his closest ideological counterpart is, of course, Annissa Essayah-George. So, on first glance, she stands to benefit the most. However, and I cannot say this enough, voters do not vote ideologically consistent. That's not how it works. You can look at the recent New York mayoral race where I think in Tiffany Caban's district, the majority of people were Tiffany Caban and Eric Adams voters. Which, if you're not following New York politics too much, they are on like opposite ends of that spectrum. And so we tend to think that people would vote ideologically, but they just don't. It's mostly about like an emotional appeal or who you know or who you talked to than it is anything involving policy or ideology. But having said that, since Annissa Essayah-George is the closest counterpart to him, some of the donors might head that way. Some of the campaign staff might head that way. Some of the volunteers, to the extent that Jon Santiago had any, might head that way. So she will benefit the most. Will it be enough to push Annissa over the edge to catch up to the two top tier candidates, which are Michelle Wu and Kim Janey? Who knows? But all right, let's do predictions. Let's have some fun. So John Barros, I put at 5% odds, and that is really just like within the margin of error, so you can call it 0 if you want. There's, again, no really reason why he's in the race at all. He has no chance of winning. I did a response to his op-ed in Commonwealth Magazine. And ultimately, this is a race between the 4 city council candidates, or city council members. Person out of those top 4 who probably has the least chance would be Andrea Campbell. I'll put her at close to 15% odds. So we got John Barros at 5%, Andrea Campbell 15 to 20. And or I should say, the reason I'm ranking Andrea 4th is because she just, from the moment Kim Janey announced, Andrea Campbell did not have a lane. She instantly started running as, I have Michelle Wu's policies, I have the left policies. However, I actually am from here. And the moment Kim Janey stepped onto the stage saying, I'm also from here, and you know what? There's universal public transportation. I like it. Let's do a pilot program. Started just copying some of the more progressive policies. Bam. Yeah, but Andrea is still, I think, in first or at least second for fundraising. And maybe there is, again, the polling is off. There's no reason to think that we have better polling than there are across the nation. So who knows? It's still, hypothetically, anyone's race. But I'm going to put Andrea 4th place, 15 to 20%. And now it gets fun, because 3rd place would have to go to Annissa Essayah-George. Again, just looking at the polling, looking at the fundraising. I think Annissa would probably be the toughest head-to-head matchup, because she just would absorb so much of the white male vote. And again, is the most conservative candidate in the race. So I put Annissa Essayah-George at 30%. And now we're left with Kim Janey and Michelle Wu. And out of the two, it's tough to rank them, but I'm going to put Michelle Wu at 2nd place. maybe closer to 35% to 40. And the reason for that is Michelle Wu has the highest floor, but probably the lowest ceiling for people who are used to fantasy football talk. So Michelle Wu has the highest floor in that she has a dedicated section of the voter base that will be voting for Michelle Wu. From the moment that she announced the quote unquote left of Boston, the Twitter left, all the lefts came out for Michelle Wu. There's a lot of reasons for that. She is just really the only person you could even try to label as a progressive, mostly because of her stance on rent control, universal public transportation, her prioritizing of climate resiliency, all those things. However, she certainly has a low ceiling in that the fact that she's not from here, she has historically not done well in the Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan sector. And while no group votes homogenously, there's no other way to really talk about it. She just simply has not really ever gotten the black vote in Boston, quote unquote. Though again, it's very tough to categorize such a large percentage of people as a coherent voting bloc. And so for me, she has probably the best chance to make it out of the prelims. But I just see as having a very hard time in head-to-head matchups. Really, the best matchup for Michelle Wu would be Andrea Campbell, because I think Michelle would then run to the right of Andrea on policing, because policing has definitely been Andrea's best policy. And so if it ends up being a Michelle Wu versus Andrea Campbell general, which I don't think it will be, but that is, to me, the easiest matchup for Michelle. I think Kim Janey and Anissa Sabi-George would be incredibly difficult. They'll get to run as a little bit more conservative, especially with issues around the police, though Kim Janey certainly is doesn't have a lot of fans in the police. I think she would over Michelle Wu, judging by the recent budget that Kim Janey just released and passed, calls for more officers. All that talk last year that Kim Janey had of reallocating resources, that's been all gone, where Michelle Wu has stood strong back-to-back budget votes voting no. So I see that as being a tough matchup for her, but also, again, Anissa. So I put Michelle Wu at about 35%, and that would lead us with who I think is the favorite, and I'm putting her at 40%. No one is getting over the mark, and that's going to be Kim Janey at 40% odds of winning. She has a few more months to continue to use the title of mayor, even though I know it's acting mayor. She runs off of Mayor Janey is literally her sign. Whenever she does something, her name is going to be more and more in the paper. Most people are not paying attention to the race right now. And so the longer this goes, meaning until September, I guess she's got about 2 months left, almost exactly, she'll get to help increase her name recognition. And that might just be enough to put her into the general, and then she's got another 2 or 3 months more name recognition to go to the general. So I think Kim definitely has the easiest route to win, but no one has an easy route. So to summarize, Kim Janey 40% odds, Michelle Wu 35, Anissa Sabi-George 30, Andrea Campbell 15, John Barrows 5. And the margin of error is 5% in both directions. And with that, Jon Santiago, bye-bye. The second story I wanted to talk about, and hello TikTokers, if you follow me on Twitch, you can see the nice Boston Globe articles that I have. So this is probably a good time for me to say, if you have not yet, to help put me into the algorithm more, go over to Twitch, follow me there. If you watch me on Facebook or YouTube, I doubt YouTube, but if you watch me on Facebook, go to Twitch, just hit subscribe over there, or like or follow, whatever terminology they use. And also, subscribe to the podcast. If you haven't already, give me 5 stars on that. Write me a nice review, why not? But hello to the TikTokers. The second story I wanted to bring up is about Ricardo Arroyo. I think the event is Saturday, but will be endorsing Kim Janey for mayor. And this explains a lot because Ricardo Arroyo was one of the most passionate voices last year during the budget vote. He called for, and forgive me that I don't have the time memorized, the 8 minutes and 30 seconds, 8 minutes, 32 seconds of a moment of silence. He almost, I think he did tear up a little bit when giving his delivery, speaking about the moment, speaking about the need for racial equality, for a time of reckoning, to hold the police accountable, to allocate funds in a way that actually target crime. Voted no against the budget, and yet this year was basically absent from the entire conversation. He spoke incredibly briefly on the Wednesday before. My recollection is he didn't even show up to the Friday public hearing. My recollection is he didn't even show up to the Monday public hearing. And then on Wednesday, he basically said, yeah, this budget's good enough. If you don't count this program or this program or this program, technically they did cut police funding, so I vote yes. And I mean, I bashed him for that very cowardly way that he handled that. It confused me because I used to be on a podcast before this called Renters Radio with my good friend Lauren Paspiza. That was a lot of fun. COVID kind of killed that project. And I said that when I first met Ricardo Arroyo, I did not get a good vibe from him. There's no other way to phrase it. Just did not mesh, didn't get a good read on him. So if I don't get a good read on you, I'm going to assume, all right, you know what, there might be something up there. Might just be a regular politician who's just saying things that people want to hear. And during last year's budget vote, I came out and I apologized. I'm just like, wow, I think I told that story. Or went into a little bit more in depth. And I was just like, yeah, I read him wrong. Guy stood by his convictions, did the right thing, voted no, articulated passionately, and was willing to actually fight for his constituents. I apologize. I misread you. And then with this Boston Globe article, it all made sense. And I said, oh, no, I shouldn't doubt myself. My instincts are generally dead on, especially when it comes to people and especially when it comes to politicians. Because the reason he was so sheepish was because he did not want to hurt Kim Janey's chances of winning. He did not want to go out there and bash Kim Janey the same way he was willing to do from Marty Walsh, even though, again, the police budget is more or less the same. It's because he wanted to make sure that he stayed on her good side so that he could endorse her, so that hopefully when she is mayor, it's kind of nice to have the mayor owe you one. Now, I don't know the backstory between every major family or political family in Boston, but it seems like, according to this article, Ricardo Arroyo comes from a very, as members here, well-connected family who is going to put the clout of the family, political clout, behind Kim Janey, referring to his father, Felix, who is the Suffolk County Register of Probate, which, no idea what that does. See, okay. I'm just looking at, I am definitely going to, and God, please somebody record it, because I'm busy this weekend. Someone please record Ricardo Arroyo statements, because I will 100% play them here next week so that we can discuss them. And this also puts a little bit more focus on a few months ago. It was Ricardo Arroyo who led the charge to get rid of the special election. And this is very important because Boston was supposed to have a special election when Marty Walsh left to vote for the mayor. And it would have been maybe around now. Like the polls would have been open like Tuesday for us to vote on this. And Ricardo Arroyo said, hey, let's not do this. Let's wait a few months and just go with a regularly scheduled election. And for people like myself, I still think that was the right call. Because when you have that amount of special elections, fragmented voting, especially given the nature of our democracy, it is a way of just diminishing the vote. Because the only people who vote in special elections are the older conservative people who have voted in every election for the last 50 years. It's very hard to explain to people what this election is for. Oh, 2 months later you have another one, and what? 2 months later you have another one? And so it's very hard to actually explain that. You'd want to have everyone at the same time vote. Because there's one big get out the vote effort. So that is still the right decision. However, at the time, people were reading into the politics of it, and they were saying, oh, I think Ricardo Arroyo is doing this to help Kim Janey, because the longer that election is, the more she can use the power of the office to build their name recognition. And I said, hey, you know what? Ricardo Arroyo, he's right now like on my good side because of how he handled the budget vote, because of his articulation and his bashing, I'll call it, of the Boston police over the last few months, all of which went away within the last few weeks. And so I gave him the benefit of the doubt, which you should never do. Should have trusted my original instincts. Should have saw that delay of the special election as nothing more than a political move to help his preferred candidate win, because that just shores up his political power and clout. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, but that now puts into focus why Ricardo Arroyo led the charge to get rid of the special election. And it's incredibly disappointing. I think I played part if somebody wants to go back, listen on the podcast or on the Twitch stream, whatever, when I think maybe played part of, oh no, I didn't, because I only focused on the Boston mayoral candidates. Maybe I will. If he, I don't know, says something this weekend in support of Kim Janey that I just think is really, no other word to say it, sleazy, I will go back and play clips of how he handled last year's budget vote and then juxtapose it to how he handled this year's budget vote, because he deserves to be heavily criticized for that. But yeah, we'll see if he says anything which actually catches my eye. But other than that, this is very quick, and this is purely self-indulgent. But I'm going to start watching the Premier League, and I have been told to support Crystal Palace. That it means nothing to me. However, wait, are they already on? Oh no, they start up again. What is this, Saturday? Anyway, if you have any views on who I should support for the Premier League in soccer, you got to put it on Twitter, you got to DM me on TikTok, you got to do something. Because right now, if I don't hear anything, I'm going with Crystal Palace. July 17th, 8 a.m., and I'm not going to watch at 8 a.m. That's ridiculous. But whatever, I'll catch the game later. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye for tonight. Wanted to do a quick thing. Talk about those two major points of the week. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this show, at least like throughout the rest of the summer. Doing it every day, maybe I'll resume that schedule. We'll see. But this was fun. It's always good to... I didn't forget how to launch live, unless right now no one can hear me, and that would be pretty funny. But I'm going to say goodbye